Those Days with the Monsters, Part 11. Taking a deep breath, Kirill looked at the absurdly fascinated Khumans staring at him. He didn't want to disappoint them, but he really wasn't sure what he knew was very interesting. Not compared to obliterating an entire Tizik's ship, at least.
Well, first off, I'm just a cargo jockey.
Kirill grimaced, his frills turning purple with embarrassment.
Not too impressive when I look at the crew of this ship, but that's what I am. I got drafted into this when you arrived at Core 5. The department needed someone who could breathe oxygen, wouldn't spook you or seem too weak, and could live with the gravity on this ship. So they pulled me in from cargo. Kind of an emergency, you understand. I'm lucky that my species have adaptive immune systems. That's not common, and any other species they could have picked would probably have died.
Kirill could see Smee's, Jason's, eyes widen, and heard him mutter something under his breath. Alex shushed him. Sorry, didn't they send you in without a hazmat suit on?
Red tape, probably.
Kirill shrugged.
Sure, I wished I had it, but really there wasn't much to tie me to Core 5 anyway. Maybe Gakrell. They were my friend, I think.
Holy... Kirill thought he heard Smee mutter some of the captain's words that he wasn't allowed to repeat, but he wasn't sure. Alex shushed her brother again, and turned to face Kirill. Failure. Please try again. Kirill blinked. What? Emotion read failure. Please try again. Well, that was weird. Kirill looked towards Doc, hoping his translator wasn't permanently broken. Shock, disgust, sadness. That was a weird response too, but at least it was picking something up. Kirill wondered if he should check the translator after his next report. So, you were fine with dying if there wasn't anything tying you to the station? Alex's voice was very, very calm.
I wouldn't say I was fine with it. I figured it would probably not be very comfortable if it was a disease, and I don't really like that idea, but, there wasn't really anyone who would miss me much.
Kirill shrugged, his frills still pulsing teal with confusion over their response.
My species are pack bonders, but I didn't really get any of that when I was a juvenile, and I guess I just didn't find a pack on Core 5, so there wouldn't be anyone to miss me.
Not even on your homeworld? Alex's face barely moved as she asked the question. Kirill's translator still couldn't read her expression.
Not really. I was a Rollaway.
Smee blinked. Rollaway? Kirill's frills pulsed purple with embarrassment as he realised he hadn't explained well.
When a mother lays her clutch, sometimes an egg escapes. The mother can't leave her clutch to catch it, so it has to grow on its own. It'll hatch just fine, and the hatchlings usually end up back at the clutch, but that incubation, hearing the mother and other hatchmates trilling, is really important for pack bonding, and rollaways don't get that, so they don't usually bond well with the rest of the clutch.
Kirill shrugged.
Maybe that's why I was even on Core 5 if I think about it. Most of my species don't ever leave Rykthen, my home planet I mean. They're too attached to their homes and clutch to wander far. Rykthen has enough to see on its own, so they don't usually mind too much, but I guess I was willing to leave because I was a rollaway.
He sighed, a hint of mournful blue colouring the edges of his frills, and betraying his determined cheeriness.
I guess I wonder sometimes what it would be like to be part of a clutch. But it's all for the best, probably. I'm wandering the stars with a brand new species now, so that's something to write home about.
Doc cleared his throat and held a thin fibrous sheet to his nose, producing a loud honking sound that startled Kirill quite a bit. Alex also jumped. Come on, Doc, warn me when you do that. She sighed and turned back to Kirill, whose eyes slid down her arm to the false hand. He watched it move as if it were a real one. He would never have known the difference. Anyway, what's your home planet like, kid? Kirill leaped eagerly to the topic, glad for a distraction.
Oh, Rykthen is... well, it's probably best to start by saying it's not a natural planet. We don't think it is anyway. Some of the things it does just don't make sense if it's not artificial.
Really? Smee's eyes were wide. His face was the equivalent of Kirill's frills turning fuchsia. Like what? Curiosity. Kirill snorted, like he had needed that one translated. It couldn't have been more obvious if Smee had tried.
Well, first off, Rykthen is split into 3 zones. There's the hydrogen zone near the poles, the oxygen zone in the middle region, and then the narrow band zone which has a few heavier gases, like hydrogen sulfide in, well, narrow bands around the equator. And that's not just, oh, this gas is more easily available here. No. The gases around the edges of the zone don't mix. You don't get the hydrogen zone and the oxygen zone mixing around the edges, and the narrow bands are all self-contained too. We just have to be careful when we go from one to another, so we don't breach the boundary and accidentally mix the two. That can sometimes set off explosions.
Doc made an impatient movement, his eyes wide. Kirill flinched a bit, remembering the needle. Doc seemed to recall himself and stepped back slightly, breathing a little faster. Either he was angry, or he wanted to know more, and Kirill didn't think he was angry at least. The translator didn't think he was angry either, but given its earlier trouble, Kirill wasn't inclined to test it. Taking a deep breath, Kirill looked straight at Doc's eyes. There was some kind of fire in them, almost hungry, and it scared him, but he had to set the record straight.
Please don't ask me how it works. I'm a cargo jockey, not a scientist. I don't know if any of our scientists have any explanation for how it works. I know I definitely don't. I think it's something to do with our magnetic field, but I don't know for sure. Oh, there's another thing. Rykthen has some weird magnetic fields. I'm talking, we know which city we're in by how iron filings fall weird. I didn't even know that wasn't how it was supposed to work until I came to Core 5, actually. My co-workers didn't believe me. I'm pretty sure they still don't.
Kirill still struggled to understand how there were so many worlds in which magnetic fields were simple, or even absent. Still, the 3 Khumans staring at him looked, if he was interpreting it right, fascinated and shocked. Curiosity, shock. Well, good to know his interpretation was consistent with that of a broken translator. It wasn't comforting that he apparently had the accuracy of a glitching electronic circuit, but that was beside the point. So, that's why you think you're, Rykthen? Anyway, that's why you think it's artificial? Kirill nodded.
They tell us that part in school. I didn't tell anyone on Core 5 that I probably came from a fake planet, though.
Hey now, Alex bared her teeth. Just because something is artificially made doesn't mean it's fake. With that same expression, she decoupled her hand. Kirill flinched and closed both sets of eyelids quickly.
Don't do that. Or at least warn me first.
That, in particular, was going to take some getting used to. Sorry. Kirill could hear the sound of the hand being reattached. Should be okay now. Cautiously, Kirill opened one eye. Alex's hands were both attached, and he opened the other with a sigh of relief. Can we get back to the artificial planet now? Smee asked, his face still showing the same wild fascination, curiosity, as if Kirill hadn't already figured that one out.
Right, as far as we can tell, the usual forces making magnetic fields are just missing from Rykthen. No molten spinning core or internal polar forces. As far as we can tell, Rykthen might be hollow, which makes the fact that it's pretty heavy compared to most planets even stranger.
Kirill sighed.
We learn this stuff in school, but I think most people off Rykthen don't know. Either that or they don't believe it. Honestly, either one is possible. Like I said, no one on Core 5 believed me.
Is that why you could breathe the other atmosphere in ours? Because your planet has so many different atmospheres?
Maybe?
Kirill sighed.
Some people down there started saying that if the planet is artificial, is there any reason to think that we're not artificial? That there's no reason for us to have come about naturally? The plants and animals that survive in each band are really different, so why should my species be able to live in all of them? I don't know about that one. It seems a little far-fetched.
Kirill sighed, dropping his head back onto the bed. He was very tired, maybe more so than he had ever been, and for a cargo jockey, that was saying something. The soreness from being tossed onto the mat started to fade, along with everything else. Alright, that's enough. I know you want to know more, but he's a patient right now, so out. Smee opened his mouth. Kirill thought vaguely that he was about to protest, but Doc shook his head. You heard me, out. He glanced over and met Kirill's eyes. Go to sleep, Squishy. I'll deal with them. You just rest. As he very willingly dropped into sleep, Kirill mumbled,
"Not squishy."
and then nothing but sleep.